Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast, where our goal is simple: to learn from the best and discover how we can all live a better life, build a more fruitful business, and be more productive. Join us each week as we interview fellow entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and leading experts to discuss everything from marketing secrets to new technology and life as an entrepreneur.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Leverage Podcast. It's me, Nick Sonnenberg, your host as always, and today we are diving into automating and growing with my friend and collaborator, Michael Devellano. And I say that as the title because it's also the title of Michael's podcast and book. And really, it's what Mike is all about, which is why we're collaborating and working together via the Leverage platform on helping businesses automate and grow their business. And Mike is really especially talented at finding creative tech solutions for businesses, specifically when it comes to how do you roll out a CRM and use that as a core piece of functionality to help automate and grow your business. So if you think you have some unique problem in your business that can't be solved by the tools available to you, you're probably wrong. And if you've been listening to this podcast for some period of time, you've probably already heard of a lot of the tools that I've mentioned when it comes to solving complex business problems. Michael is also an expert in this field, again, specifically around CRMs. Most businesses need a CRM, which is why I felt compelled to bring him on the show and bring him onto the Leverage platform to help businesses with their CRMs. And we discuss everything in terms of what CRM is best for what type of business, how do you increase email deliverability, how you use these tools creatively to scale your business. And one of the key things that I believe in is there isn't a one size fits all. I have my own preferences on CRMs and tools, but they might be great for me. But if you're a financial advisor running a team of 5, or you're a healthcare provider running a team of 20, that could influence what the right tool is for you and for your unique situation. And that's one of the things that I really want to stress, because I hate when I see people just get hammered with, hey, you need to use this one tool, this is the best tool, because that's just BS. There isn't a one tool that's the best. It really depends on where you're at with your business, what industry you're in, where you might be in the future, what current tools are you using, and all of that goes into when we make a suggestion at Leverage, what the right tool is for you, what the right CRM is, and Mike is of the same mindset, which I really appreciate. I think that today's episode is particularly super valuable for anyone, whether you're just starting a business or you might already have a business with no CRM and no automation, so you're starting from scratch, or you might have one, but it's not well optimized. You're not doing nearly as much out of that tool as you could be. So I think that regardless of where you're at, this is going to be very valuable for you. And too often, I see entrepreneurs spend crazy amounts of time and money to build custom tech solutions for their business, when there's tools on the market that can do the same thing way, way better at a fraction of the cost. I've worked personally with so many clients where they're explaining their problem, and it really breaks my heart when I hear, oh, I just spent $250,000 building this tech to solve this problem. I'm like, well, for $1,000 a month, you could have used this tool off the shelf, not wasted 2 years, and it's going to be 10 times better than what you just blew $250,000 on. This episode, I think you're going to find extremely valuable. And if I had to guess, I'd say that Mike and I probably mentioned over 20 tools in this episode. So be sure to get your pen and paper out. Just joking. We have show notes, so you can find all of those in the show notes. And as always, you can check out those show notes at getleverage.com/podcast. So let's get into the episode with Mike.
Today we have with us Mike Devellano. Mike and I met through John Levy, actually, through the Influencers Dinner Circle out of New York, and recently got reconnected at one of the digital salons that John hosted. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the Influencer Dinner, John Levy, it's a really cool event that happens in LA and New York, where basically 10 people get together for a dinner. You're not allowed to say your last name or what you do. And then you cook dinner, and at the end you reveal who's who. And then after that, it opens up to previous guests and you have drinks and stuff like that. So when I did it, I sat next to Marla Maples, Donald Trump's ex-wife, the head of Good Morning America, a bunch of Academy Award winners. And I was like the least impressive person. But you always meet interesting people. So Mike like none other, is an interesting person. And we hit it off because we geek out about the same stuff. So Mike has a podcast as well called Automate and Grow, and a book, Automate and Grow. Guess what? He's into automation and growth, just like me. So we're going to be talking about that. He also runs a consulting firm. He's an expert at CRMs, and we're going to be exploring some type of partnerships to work together on executing implementation for CRMs. But Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And just for the record, I usually go by Michael. Mike was the story I was telling you, which was my great-grandfather they were calling him for like 10, 15 years in Canada, Mary Devellano. And then he realized that's a girl's name. So he changed his name to Mike.
All right, Michael. Gotcha. So I don't come across many people that are as into systems, tools, automation, right? So whenever I do come across someone, it's like super exciting that I can geek out and talk. So what's your background? How did you get into this space?
It was kind of a roundabout way. So I was actually in the wireless industry for a really long time. On the carrier side, on the manufacturer side, actually at BlackBerry for a little while. I was a Bell Mobility cell phone guy. When I was in university, I had a dealership. But I always had this thing around software that I wanted to really do that, but I just got in this other space. And then I started converging, I would say, because what I was working on my last gig in the carrier space was what is now called IoT, I would say. But in those days, we changed the name every year. It was weird. But it was like take Scotch tape and glue and make it work around data. So it was like complex. And then, this thing called the iPhone comes out. People are lined up at the stores. And I'm like, ooh, this is like way easier to build stuff because the concept of an app really got my attention. I'm like, I can do that with my eyes closed. So after the end of 2009 and then 2010, I basically went out on my own and started building everyone's iPhone and Android app. And then, of course, that leads to building backends. And then what was maybe a weird segue was I was introduced by Motorola, of all people, to Salesforce.
Did you study engineering in school, or are you a developer?
It's funny because I did a lot of developer-like stuff. But, like anytime I tried to take programming or anything like that in school, I went to University of Waterloo, which is a big engineering school. I would never get in there as an engineer. There's no way. I'm not that structured. I have too much business and art in my brain. I went there for economics, but.
So you just taught yourself coding, or you would hire developers, people would come to you and then you would hire developers to build it?
A bit of both. I think I recognize the limit of my ability. Where I'm really strong is being able to take business requirements and figure out how do you make this work technically and then architecting it. And then I can go in the code, but I think I lose effectiveness when I go that deep. So really what I've been successful at is being able to translate business requirements to the technical team and being a bridge between them. And I've built around that.
That's what I view my strength as well. I always used to think that my strength was math or data science, but it's actually a very unique skill set I've found over time, being able to distill and translate, kind of being a translator almost, like, hey, this is the problem. Go and speak to the people that can be the solution to the problem, and being able to understand what people to even talk to and how to talk to them is quite a rare skill set I found.
So even, if I go back to my carrier gig time, I was always that guy where it was like, I'm presenting the roadmap, I'm translating what the technology means to you. And then if you need something to work, I'm figuring it out and explaining to you how I'm going to build it and then getting it built. So I'm like, well, that's kind of the business too, which is the same thing. It's like, what problem do you got? I know all the universe of possibilities, or I'll find them. And then, I think the other translation to that, and where projects really fail, like if you're building something custom, people think, let's hire a developer. But that's the last guy you want to hire.
100%. I feel bad. So I do a lot of process consulting and efficiency consulting. And sometimes people come to me and they're like, oh, I just spent $250,000 hiring a software developer to build this custom thing. I'm like, well, what's your CRM that you use? And they're like, we don't have one. I'm like, so basically you just rebuilt a CRM from scratch. Like, not only did they waste $250,000, they've wasted a year of opportunity costs because they haven't been live for a year because they've been trying to, right? So I hear you. It's so crazy.
And I think that brings me back to how I kind of started, which was, even though I was building front end stuff on iPhone and Android, I kept getting projects where the back end was Salesforce. I looked at it, I go, holy smokes, this is really interesting because I only have to build this part, not all of this. I don't have to build physical layer. I don't have to build an application. I don't have to set up a database. I don't have to manage security. I don't even have to build UI. And there's already an API. So it really was an interesting model where you have this cloud-based stack where I can go, look, I can just build on top of this and I can focus on user experience. Or I can take what you're talking about. Let's not recreate the wheel. Let's customize this thing to do what you need. And I think that's a huge win for people. Over and over, I see two things. One, people unnecessarily rebuilding stuff that's already in the universe.
Totally. I mean, my first book, Idea to Execution, you'd probably appreciate it. I'm going to read your book is on my list to read. But we built the company on duct tape and spit. And I used Zapier with Trello, with Toggle. And then after a few months, I did a bit of coding. And then after that, bought a theme on Theme Forest, hired a cheap developer. And it was just like very iterative. But, not to mention, most likely, whatever you think you're going to be building, you're going to have to scrap all of it anyways, because you are off on requirements or requirements change over time. So
I think you have to ask yourself the question, what business am I in this context of, am I a software, like as a service company? If I'm building something that's not a core product, so distinguish between digital products and stuff you use to automate. And I think that's the huge mistake that people make, where you go, look, can I just buy and customize and then, build digital products? And that's my thing that I make money on, is the digital product, not the process. I don't make money by operating a system that I built for myself. And I think that's the line. Like in the book, the methodology is pretty simple if you really, really, really boil it down. It's build digital products, automate marketing, sales, and support. There's so many, we're in the golden age of SaaS for marketing, sales, and support stuff. Would you build an accounting program?
Yeah, it's like go and rebuild QuickBooks.
Don't build CRM either. It doesn't make sense. So you've got very established platforms. Focus on if you're going to generate money out of it, and you can scale your product by being digital.
I think that this is where our unique abilities and value come in, right? Is one, companies might not have even heard of a CRM or other tools. Like CRM is just one tool in the tech stack. But even if they know what it is, maybe they use it lightly, they might not be able to see all the capabilities and how that could translate into solving a business problem. And I think that that's really the value that people like us offer, is the ability to be able to see, hey, that's a problem. And if you use Salesforce we set you up with a database with Zapier and a few other things, we can, with between three tools, they can talk to each other. And instead of $250,000 for $25,000, you'll actually have a better product, and it'll take 3 months instead of 2 years.
Totally. You hit it on the head. I think where you think about, if you're a big company, you have a CTO. And the CTO is not the CIO. The CTO is the guy saying, what digital products are we building? And then what's everything else? And he's making tech stack and developer choices that, the CEO or the COO or the CFO is not going to make. He's supporting the business. And it's more important than anything to be digital. Digital should be now, the floor, right? It shouldn't be a nice to have, because the next age is AI. You're never going to get to AI and machine learning if you don't have a couple things in place: systems and data. And you need both, right? And the data is what AI and machine learning lives on. So you're never going to get here unless you get this straight. So it's don't be in the business of building systems that you can store data in and just buy.
When people come to you to solve a business problem, is it usually a problem that can be solved with a CRM, or are you giving solutions that would utilize other types of systems beyond a CRM?
It's a good question. So the way I look at it is this.
And also maybe it'd be worthwhile to explain what a CRM is for some people, because
good idea.
Some people, yeah.
To dial it back. So, I think I mentioned at the beginning, my methodology is teach people or help people build digital products. That's usually some sort of custom something, whether it's an app, AI. In the future, there's going to be robotics and 3D printing stuff. But I think for me, it's mostly digital products that scale without humans, or a hybrid where it's human and data. So that's the product side. So to me, that's custom. Then you look at marketing, sales, and support, and you go, who's my customer? Where are they? How do I get to them? And then you pick something for marketing automation. Everyone needs CRM, and CRM is customer relationship management. It's a really old concept because it goes back to like the Rolodex, right? Everyone needs to know who's your customer, who are potential customers. If I have a customer, who are the people at that customer, and what's the stuff going on? Like, do I have new sales opportunities, closed sales opportunities, orders, invoices, all that stuff, cases, post sales. So everyone needs a CRM at some point and of some type, because your whole business is about customers. So you need that piece. And really you determine like, that's the source of truth about the customer. Everything else revolves around it. So if it's marketing, if it's a digital product, you got to tie it into that thing. So that's CRM is kind of the brain of data for your business, whether you're one guy or you're like 1 million employees.
Is there a type of business that you've come across that wouldn't need a CRM?
If they don't have customers.
Yeah. So like what would be a business that doesn't,
how do you have revenue without customers?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a baseline thing. And I think that's, what people do is they approximate a CRM. They'll stick stuff in spreadsheets. They'll pretend that QuickBooks, like their general ledger, is a CRM, and that's where they have their customers. But then they're not really creating systems around supporting people or selling to people.
We used Intercom as kind of our first lightweight CRM when we were starting off at Leverage. And then Salesforce is a great tool, but we went straight to Salesforce, and we found it to be too heavy.
Yep.
For, with us on the order of a couple hundred clients.
Yep.
And I think one thing that I feel people make the mistake is they hear from somewhere, oh, this is the best tool, let's go with it. But each tool has its pros and cons. And really, depending on your use case and business requirements, Salesforce could be the best tool for one business, right? You're an enterprise, large company. And it could be completely overkill and not actually be the best solution for another business. But so now actually we've moved over to HubSpot, which I was telling you about. But that's just because that solves a unique problem that we have, where we need all the freelancers to be able to see emails between each other and things like that. And it was just easier on HubSpot. You could have done it on Salesforce. It was just way harder for us to set up.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point, which is I'm not advocating one size fits all, because I don't think that works. I think that's why you have someone that can understand what your problem is and then really make a recommendation. For me, Salesforce applies to really obviously B2B. So anyone that's selling to other businesses, it makes total sense. And then if it's complex and there's a lot of pieces and you need development and you need it to scale, it can make a lot of sense. And I think where people fall down with Salesforce is it looks complex because it's not finished. And they have words in the real world that they think mean things like leads and prospects, and they don't understand what those things mean in Salesforce. Mm-hmm. So they try to either make it do what they think it should do rather than understanding what it does and then applying it to their business. It's not that you need to change your business. You just need to put data in the right place and at the right time.
Totally.
It sounds like a stupid problem, but then you get into these issues where people are like, but I want this report. And I'm like, but you're not collecting that data, or you're doing it in a weird way. We got to fix it.
For me, CRM is one core thing that every business, no matter what type of business you're in, you need. But then the other stuff that I talk about for kind of core tools that every company needs, you need to have some type of email to communicate with clients. You need to have an internal communication tool. I like to separate it. So Slack or something like Slack Teams. Yep. Project management system is another, for me, core layer. Yep. Every company has to prioritize tasks and projects. And then documenting knowledge. So having kind of an internal wiki or process documentation, so you're storing knowledge. So those are kind of like the four buckets I feel every business needs. And then whichever CRM, whichever internal communication, whatever, that to me is a second order kind of conversation. But you have to understand that you need those things, pick the right one for your unique business, and make sure that people are using it right. Because you could have you could be on Salesforce, which maybe is the most popular one, if it's not set up right and not being used right, I mean, it could actually hurt your productivity.
Totally. And the one unfortunate thing is that sometimes when you're buying from a business that has, I'm going to talk in generalities, when you're buying SaaS from a business that has the motivation of selling you more SaaS, you don't buy the right thing. One thing like a Salesforce does is they productize their software as a service in a really purposeful way, which is, there's pricing and then there's features. And I think you really got to pay attention to what you need, because I see it all the time where people buy too much.
Yep.
And then they get locked into these contracts, which is another weird concept to me, but it's a thing, and they're not using it because it's too much. It's just a fire hose. So I think it's like at its core, if you start on something like Google Sheets and Trello, maybe that's okay for a while, right? And then you get, to your point, a certain number of customers, things get complex, things start falling through the cracks. You realize, well, I have my data in my spreadsheet. I'm tracking stuff and trying to automate stuff in Trello, but really that should be my project. And the data that's in the spreadsheet should be in Salesforce or should be in Hubspot or should be in something else around accounts, people at those accounts, opportunities within those accounts, and, quotes, orders. Like you start slicing it down by the type of data, then you're like set, and that, I think that's the thing, is just at different stages of your business, you might feel comfortable with different things. But at some point when you have too many customers and too much data and you can't report on it, or you're losing stuff in the cracks, that's when sometimes people are forced to go to that stage.
And I know some people, they start pushing back. Oh, well, that's going to be really expensive. It's going to be $1,000 a month or something. It's like, how much are you going to, it pays for itself if you're able to close one extra deal a month or whatever the right numbers are. I mean, a lot of these tools, to me, I don't look at them as costs. I look at them as profit centers, because yes, you pay a monthly fee, but the amount of productivity gain or uncovered hidden opportunities and hidden revenue that you might be able to find it in a spreadsheet, but you would have to pay someone hours to find, and then you start losing, you start slipping on productivity on those employees. They pay for it. It pays for itself.
When you're paying someone 40 to 50 or 80 grand a year to manage spreadsheets for your company.
Yeah.
Like that's insane.
Yeah.
And it's shocking how many companies have reports that someone's making in a spreadsheet somewhere. And they're not small companies. So I think the thing is, if it's in a spreadsheet, it should be in a CRM. That's pretty much or a project management tool. It's usually one of the two. And that way, finance, sales, support, you can all report on the data and use it, right? And I think it's just like, you need someone to, in your, whether it's a fractional CTO type guy like me or you, or, you're a business leader and you get this, you got to get that data in a CRM and organize it properly, because then you're not chasing spreadsheets. You're not manipulating formulas. All that stuff goes away. You're not making it look nice for a report so people understand what's going on in the business. It's like, if it's in there, I can create a report in like minutes or an hour,
So in terms of marketing automation and sales automation, what other tools are you using? Obviously, a CRM is core. What do you prefer or use for marketing automation?
There's a lot of tools out there. So I think it depends on two things. One, who are you selling to? Are you B2B or B2C? And then where are they? So in other words, are you reaching them by email? Are you reaching them by paid ads? Are you reaching them organic? Are you reaching them on social? You got to kind of figure that out, the traffic and conversion. And then pick a tool.
Right.
And there's so many tools out there, as you know, like, so if I'm in B2B, I want some sort of way to use email, probably in paid ads, for example, maybe to attract people that look like my client. And then you want to create marketing qualified leads in your CRM. So for that, there's a lot of tools, everything from as simple as Reply or Airborne to, outreach is really big right now. And that kind of crosses over into sales a little bit, like that SDR type rule.
Yeah. We've been using Mixmax for the sales email automation.
Funnelflare is a newer one. And actually I just interviewed Sean Leonard from Funnelflare.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the outreach type space, but it kind of crosses the chasm between marketing and SDR type role.
One of the key things that you get with Mixmax is it looks like it's being sent from you. So it's sent from your email server, not like if you use MailChimp, it's going to be sent from theirs and it's going to get flagged as promotions. Yeah. And you're going to get, even with the best copywriter in the world doing subject lines, it's going to be 15%, 20% open rate tops versus in 3 minutes, I'm not a copywriter, but I could throw together a decent subject line, throw it up in Mixmax, and I'll get 70 to 85% open rate just because of the technical hack and the distinction between sales email automation and marketing email automation that a lot of people don't understand.
That makes sense. I think unless you're doing something crazy, like MailChimp is an old tool that's being adapted for the modern world. It's very Scotch tape and glue, and they got a lot of limitations on the types of lists and outreach you can do. So I think most newer tools that are out there let you use your identity. So I can use my G Suite or other identity, or I create one for my campaigns. And then whether that's the sales rep or the marketing department, that's, deliverability is an issue with everyone on email, right? But you don't want to look like you're coming from MailChimp. It's not.
Right. No, exactly. So how do you improve deliverability?
It's like a dark art, right? One platform that's really good at that is MakesBridge. And MakesBridge is, I would say, really great at bulk type email marketing for marketing departments, and how they accomplish it is a bunch of things. But one is diversity of outgoing servers. So in the background, they have a way that you might have one campaign on your end, but technically what they're doing is they're sending it from multiple sources, and they're using like machine learning to figure out which one of these is getting through most and then send more through that pipe. So that's the one way you do it. The other is, just be a good email citizen, try to have as much validation of your emails that you're sending to. So you can use tools like datavalidation.com and say, yeah, these are valid emails. These ones have high probability of bouncing, or these are dead. And then act accordingly. Separate them out, because your domain reputation gets smashed every time you have a bounce or every time it goes to someone's spam. All of the firewalls of the world talk to each other. And they're like, oh, this guy's in my spam folder. You should put him in your spam folder. Right. So it's like this crazy behind the scenes chatter. Like, I think that's how the best platforms are worried about the deliverability issue get through. So it's like,
are you using data validation all the time or only in certain use cases?
It just depends, I guess, like the type of list. If you're using small batch and you're more kind of doing 100 to 300 emails a day, you can use like something like reply.io, for example, and they have data validation built in. You can push a button and scrub your list before you send it. And then usually you get the health of that list to a pretty good spot. If you're doing bulkier stuff where it's like 50 or 100,000 emails and you're trying to send it out, what people call a newsletter, or maybe it's a more stage campaign. I like MakesBridge. I would run it through data validation when you first putting someone into a campaign, and then have mechanisms in place to make sure that whoever's going into the campaign after that from CRM or from landing pages or whatever your source is.
Goes through data validation.
You're validating it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it just destroys your reputation. I also think it's good practice to not use your main domain, like have something that looks similar just in case.
Have you any experience with HubSpot's marketing automation?
Yeah, lots. Yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of, they've been around for a while. Great book, by the way. Is it Mark LaBerge that I think
Mike? I think it's Mike, isn't it?
Mike. Yeah, there's a great, I forget the name of the book now. It's bad. But
I was just watching a webinar actually a few days ago from him. He's a smart dude.
He has like one of the best books on using marketing to go from anonymous to known and to use content marketing. So he's, I mean, it's a brilliant book. So I'll find it and let it.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. I think his last name is LaBerge, but yeah. So to go back on the tool itself,
I know his company's Stage 2 Capital, CRO of HubSpot.
That sounds exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The tool itself, they've organized it similar to a Salesforce in that they have a specific tool for marketing, now sales, which is CRM, and they even have a support part, which is post-sales case management. ticket management.
Tickets.
So I think even Zoho has done something similar, which it makes a lot of sense. So now you've got products for different parts of the business or functions. The marketing automation is great for landing pages, going from anonymous to known. So they've got some really good capabilities around integrating to your website, automating email campaigns, and then tracking conversion. So that part is like very mature, and they're one of the OGs in that. Mark Roberge, that's his name, The Sales Acceleration Formula.
Mark, yeah.
Great book if you're looking for a book on this topic. From that point of view, it's very good. The CRM's not bad. You can do a certain level of customization. The support, I haven't seen a lot of application for a couple clients. And then they've got some really good web tools that tie into the marketing piece. Where it confounds me is their productization. So they've been really aggressive during COVID about getting people on this $50, what seems like a cheap plan that includes marketing, sales, and maybe support, depending on what deal they cut with you. But then it rapidly goes up to $800 a month.
You pay for the contact list size?
That's part of it, right? It's like they go, listen, if you want more than 1,000 contacts, which is nothing.
Yeah.
Then you got to, or, they have a bunch of other sliders that are really difficult to control in your business. Rapidly, you're going to get into a much higher price point, which could be okay depending on the size of your business. I just find it really chintzy these days to control people by contacts. Like Salesforce, it's like, well, how many do you got? Let's get them in there. Okay, well, yeah, it's $75 a month, or it's $30 a month, or it's $150 a month, depending on which product. But okay, well, I got 100,000 contacts. Are they legit? Like, yeah, okay, let's put them in. It's not like, oh, your price jacked up. Their productization to me is really weird around contacts, and I think that should go away. That's like having a all-you-can-eat sell plan these days. It doesn't make sense to me.
But just on the functionality of the tool itself,
pretty good. I mean,
for the marketing, and they also have sales automation too. Yeah,
the CRM is not bad. I mean, their CRM has caught probably the last 4 or 5 years has really become one of the top 3 or 4 CRMs out there. They seeded the market really well with a pretty good free product.
Yeah,
and it ties in. It's one platform. So it just depends on the complexity of your business and how much you need to customize it.
Well, it's all use case. Like I said, we picked Salesforce at first, and then our business requirements became morphed or changed, or they were always there. Maybe we just didn't do a good assessment up front. But we need the entire team to be able to see information on a client or activity on who has an upcoming meeting with a client, or recent notes from meetings, or recent email activity. And yeah, Salesforce has kind of like a $25 a month. I forget what the name of that license is. Essentials. Yeah. So that was one way. But one of the nice things with HubSpot is the CRM access is totally free. You don't pay for that.
To a level.
Or at least, well,
they're
for
definitely
us,
charging for it.
Well, we're paying for sure, but we're paying for the sales, marketing, and service, not for the access to the CRM. That was one of the things. Plus,
got it.
It was just a bit more intuitive, we found. But
it's again, a good product. I mean, they're top 3 or 4, I think.
What are the others? Pipedrive you'd put up there in the top 3 or 4?
I'm not a big Pipedrive fan. I think Pipedrive has a very limited cycle in your business, and there's very specific businesses that want that view. And I think when you get to a level of customization, like you start wanting to do what's probably becoming more and more basic customization, you run to walls.
Really?
But I've never been a huge fan of that. I think Copper's a little better.
Yeah.
Method, did they change their name? I forget. I think that's what it was. It was called Method before, but
was it called
I get confused. Hold on. Let's see. Get Method. Is it the same as Copper? Because they're very Gmail focused.
Yeah. Copper, I think that was one of their big strengths. So you mentioned a few tools here. If someone is on, say, HubSpot for the marketing, sales, ticketing, is there any reason to still use a tool like Reply or MakesBridge, or can you do all of that?
I think it would be an either or. I mean, unless you really wanted to separate out nurture versus bulk campaigns, you might use both. I think people are getting away from that. I think that a lot of that email activity is moving into the SDR type role, like sales development reps, where it's, to your point, it's personal, it's one-to-one. And whether that's a real person or not going forward is a question, right? Because I think avatars and automation of the SDR role is very, very, very possible and creeping that way. Mm-hmm. And those are usually the people that are proactively reaching out to people that look like your prospects and then getting interested, and giving it to you.
That they're qualified.
Yeah, it's like your prospector in a sense. Cold calling is garbage, as far as I'm concerned. So you need this new evolution of, well, how do I communicate with someone on LinkedIn, email, maybe Messenger, maybe text, right? And you need all those modalities to really start talking to someone usually. And that's where like a funnel flare or an outreach are killing it right now. Like they're just doing amazing business, right? They're getting lots of, well, I don't know if you saw, did you see the money that outreach just raised?
How much?
They raised another 50 million. They're up to 289.
Really?
Yeah. And they are like
impressive company though.
They've got like 70 million in revenue.
Yeah. Crazy.
But they were like 38 million last year. So they're doubling. So the money's going, they've got a system now to scale it, and the tool's amazing. Like it's an excellent tool.
I never used it. I mean, we were using Mixmax for a long time. We're probably going to kill it because one of the benefits of HubSpot for us too is it killed 6 tools. Like it's going to kill Mixmax,
right?
Calendly,
totally.
Salesforce, Intercom, ConvertKit,
right?
A hell of a lot of Zaps.
Totally. Having one platform is pretty useful. So
to your point earlier, there's not just like a blanket suggestion for any of these things. It really matters the context of someone's business. What's the current tech stack? What's the future tech stack look like? What's your business requirements now and in the future? Because reply.io or outreach could be a good tool for me, but not a good tool for the next person, depending on many, many different factors. And if you pick the wrong tool, not only are you wasting the monthly cost, but you are potentially wasting a lot of people's time and resources, getting something set up that's just going to go into the garbage.
So that was kind of my motivation for writing the book, Automate and Grow, because what I wanted to do was bring it down in a way that people could really, in a useful way, without being a CTO type person, answer some questions and then pick a tool. Or if they picked a tool, evaluate whether it's the right one or how to fix it. So to me, what you want to do in your business is 4 things. You want to have a digital product plan. You go, who's my customer? Where are they? Am I reaching them digital, hybrid, or direct? Hybrid being a combination of direct or, digital. So that's your product side. And in the book, I think there's links to a really simple 2-page worksheet. You can figure that out, answer some questions, and then at least give yourself an insight. Then you go, what do I build, or do I build anything? So that's the product side. And then what you want is a traffic and conversion plan, a sales playbook, and a customer success roadmap. And it doesn't have to be super complicated. Like I've tried to give really simple templates for each, where you're answering questions about your business, who your customer is, and how you're going to deal with them. Then it should be pretty obvious where you go, okay, well, I need these features. What's the best tool? Then you can go out and talk and ask questions, right? You can look at charts on a guy's website and say, do I need reply or do I need outreach? And then you can pick something and make it work with your plan. And that's what you want to do. It can be overwhelming picking technology.
Yeah.
There's so many vendors out there that are building so many things. And the approach of them is to have a little slice of the universe that's unique. So I think the key for anyone's business is just, first of all, have a game plan around how you're going to sell. Like, how am I going to deliver a product? Am I selling a software as a service? Am I selling through an app? Like, are you like an Uber-esque or Instacart type business? Or is it direct service people? So that's the first thing. So that's your digital product plan. The traffic and conversion plan just says, here's who my ideal customer is, and this is where they are, and this is how I'm going to get their attention. And then here's how I'm going to stay in touch with them. Because if you answer those things, then you can start looking at products to buy and go, does this have what I need?
So when I was evaluating, we were looking at Zendesk, which acquired Base for a CRM, and then we were looking at HubSpot and a couple others. But what I did was I took a step back and I was just like, what are all the requirements that we need to solve from a business standpoint? And for each requirement, I created a sticky, and then I organized the sticky notes, right? So I need to be able to do lead source tracking, issue tracking, sync phone calls. So everything that were kind of important to me into the business, I started grouping it, going through the process of speaking with their salespeople. I had a basis to drive the conversation. And then with Miro, what was cool is I could just stick the logo on the sticky note. So then just very visually, the answer was just really clear that we need to go with HubSpot, because like almost everything had a HubSpot logo, and the ones that didn't weren't kind of mission critical, right? And then you could start ranking the importance by putting colors on it too. So that was kind of a modern way of putting together like an RFP, but for a systems picking. And now anytime we have to pick a system, we're doing it like that with sticky notes. What are all the requirements? Bucket them together, and then you compare softwares against the sticky notes. But start with just being really clear on what you need, because the rabbit hole that I see people going down is you're not clear on what you need, but then you start getting really excited by what people have to say, and they have really good sales pitches, and then you pick the wrong tool.
Absolutely, people buy stuff based upon a current pain. Usually, it's like, God, we got to solve this. And that's why they're looking, as opposed to proactively coming up with a game plan and a strategy. And what you just did is you mapped out your strategy. You said, look, here's who my customer is. Here's how I get them. Here's how I sell to them and deliver on that. And then here's how I keep them. And those are really the questions you just need to answer, because then what you do is you do what you did. You go, well, that means I need these things. Do you have something that does that thing? You don't have to be an expert in CRM to do that. I mean, it helps, you can hire someone like us to be kind of your advocate, and that we can probably shorten the cycle of, well, what should we look at? But in the meantime, like if you're going it alone, like that's how I would do it. I mean,
realistically, had I done that exercise a year before, we would have saved probably $50K just in like hiring different people to set up and customize the old system. Plus like the opportunity cost of what we lost for a year not having had the right system. I mean, it starts becoming a really expensive, wrong decision when you pick the wrong tech stack for your business, at least foundational tech stack, right? Like I'm not talking like, oh, I prefer, we chose to use Google Hangouts instead of Zoom. Like they both pretty much work. It's not, there's different levels of importance, right? But when we start going into like CRM and things like that, you're talking about the core of the business now. And that's really critical that you spend the time to get it set up right and pick the right tooling.
Yeah, I think that, again, it boils down to, what do you want to be when you grow up? So if you're, are you in a business? If it's a software business, they gonna get it, right? They're building software to solve a problem. And the leverage you get at a digital stuff versus hiring people is it's much cheaper in the long run. And not even maybe the long run, maybe the short run. Hiring people to do repetitive tasks makes no sense anymore, unless they're really, really low cost and it's just too much to develop the solution. There's not an existing solution. So I think the key is you want, like even in your own business, what you guys do, you've figured it out. Like this is high value work that I can't automate. I need someone that knows what they're doing around marketing or promotion, or those are the things that make more sense, I mean,
even if you can find someone super, super cheap, I find it is a good strategy to start with that so that you can work out the requirements more clearly, right? And then you might uncover some things like, oh, actually, this isn't going to work, or actually, there's this other thing we weren't thinking about. So starting with some human automation, but even if the human automation is cheap, it's not scalable, right? So once you do get clear, immediately start thinking, all right, how do we hire a developer, automate this? And then the cheap labor can work on something else onto the next thing and test it out.
Totally. I totally agree with that approach. I've come up with a little system myself that's really simple. The 5-hour a week pilot. So it's like, okay, can I hire this thing? Well, first of all, what you do is you do every 90 days. If you have a one-person business or however big your business is, every 90 days, you as the leader do this. You make a list, and it's got A, B, and C on it. The A stuff is the stuff in your business that annoys you. The B stuff is the stuff that's repetitive, but it's important. And the C stuff is what inspires you and that you're best at. It's your highest value work. So then the A stuff is stuff you try to eliminate or automate. The B stuff, absolutely you automate or delegate. And then the C stuff is where you spend your time. And that might be sales, it might be marketing, it might be making content, whatever that thing is, you deal with all the other stuff. And then that's where you get, to your point, you can go, all right, let's say I have something on the B list. I don't have a piece of software that's obvious for it, but a person can do this because it's repetitive. If I gave it to them for 5 hours a week and let's run this for 3 or 4 weeks, because it's a really inexpensive experiment, how does that work? And does that solve a problem in the business? Mm-hmm. And then you go, well, can I automate that? And then give that person the next B list thing.
So funny that we're talking about this. So we're getting to a quarter end. So we have a process for doing our end of quarter, but I do a one-on-one with everyone at the end of the quarter. And part of the structure of that call is, how did this quarter go? What things are on your plate that don't give you joy or are not in your unique ability? And let's have a conversation on how we could get it off your plate. And the solution could be automation. It could be delegating to a cheaper resource or someone more appropriate. But regardless, we have that conversation. And then we have these checklists. We use Process Street, and the things we want to get off their plate and give to a cheaper resource, we are updating it in a weekly and monthly kind of checklist for the cheaper resources that we have. And that process we do on a quarterly basis to constantly be fleshing out stuff that people shouldn't be doing.
I love it. I mean, that's so useful, because otherwise you just keep going.
Yeah.
And you don't, first of all, if you have people that you are paying to be on your team, they might be really unhappy with something.
Well, one, you don't want to be paying $100 an hour person to do something that you could either do for free through automation or a $5 an hour person could do.
Right.
But then even if your company's super profitable and you're like, no, what, I don't care because we're making so much money, like the odds that you're going to be able to retain people for a long period of time when they're unhappy, like if a senior person's not going to want to be doing, menial repeat work. And pretty much no one is. Like, honestly, I don't want anyone to be doing that type of work, no matter what their hourly rate is. But at the very least, you want to make sure that the most senior resources are doing, and you're the most senior resource in your company.
You are, yeah.
So, I mean, start with yourself and do the process, but then really, I find that you get the real exponential benefit when you go beyond yourself and you have your whole team operating like that. It's one thing for me to save 10 hours a week, but if I have every person in the company saving 10 hours a week, that's where the real leverage comes in, I feel. Automation's never going to get sick, complain, ask for a raise, mess up on it. They're going to perform that function or that task the same way every time, 100% of the time, right? But I think that the nuance and the key decision that is probably not easy for people to understand or to make is, at what point do you automate it? And there's tools like Zapier, which are great out of the box tools. But when you start getting into custom, you start then having to evaluate what's the cost of it versus, if it's 1 minute a week and it's like the type of task that happens very sporadically, how do you weigh that versus the thing that happens 20 times a day and touches kind of a core part of the business? And if there's a mess up, it could really financially cost you. So there's an order to which you want to start considering automation, and being strategic with what you automate, I think, is a key part of the puzzle.
I think that's where that list is really useful, where if it's on the B list and it's repetitive and important, it's probably happening enough that you got to automate it.
Yeah.
If it's just annoying and it's a one-off all the time, you go,
delegate it.
Or I'm not doing it.
Yeah. So, right. So like in your framework, the A's are probably delegation, more things to delegate to someone else, and the B's are probably more automation.
Or you just get rid of A.
Yeah. Or
like we don't say no enough.
It's funny. Joe Polish, who runs Genius Network, says the best way to or maybe it was Ariana Huffington, says the best way to complete a task is just to remove it from your to-do list.
Well, and I think that the original ABC list, I think that comes from Dan Sullivan.
Oh, really? I'm in Strategic Coach. Are you in Strategic Coach?
I'm not, no, but I think he has a video that is on that.
We're really tight with the strategic coach community. A lot of our clients at Leverage. I'm the keynote speaker at his Free Zone Frontier, like his high level group. I'm the speaker next year.
Oh, that's amazing.
So big fan of Dan and Babs and Shannon Waller, and they have a great program. And all the stuff that we're talking about are concepts, the whole concept of unique ability and having people work on things that give them joy or that tap into their unique zone of genius. I mean, it's all same concept that we're sharing.
Totally. And Joe Polish, I think, partners with him on the 10X podcast, right? And then have his event. I can't remember the event, but
he has his Genius Network annual event.
Yeah, Genius Network. That's what it is.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I know we're about to go and flip this and I'm going to be on your podcast, but where can people find out more about you and what you're up to and your book and your podcast?
So you can check out the podcast at automategrow.biz/podcast. The book is also called Automate and Grow, and that's on Amazon. If you need help with, CRM, marketing automation, or just someone to bounce digital product stuff off of, it's cloudadvisory.io. And there's actually there's a useful little report there that helps you predict the future.
Cool.
It's called 20 Trends for the 2020s. And it's based a lot on Peter Diamandis' writing around exponential technologies. So you can go down that for free. And otherwise just reaching out on LinkedIn is always good too.
I want to give a big thanks to Mike for being a guest on the episode and also for introducing all of us to so many of these tools and his expertise and knowledge. Be sure to head to getleverage.com/podcast to check out show notes for today's episode. And you're going to be able to find links to all the tools that we mentioned, as well as to Mike's book and podcast. And also you'll be able to download our remote communications guide there. It's, again, completely free, covers the 4 simple steps you can take to build an effective remote communication system with your team. Everything from which tools to use, how to set them up, how to use them, how to get your entire team on the same page. So be sure to head to getleverage.com/podcast to grab that. If you haven't already, you'll have to click in today's episode to find that free resource. If you are interested in speaking to us about how we might be able to help you automate and grow your business, in particular, setting up and optimizing and helping you to choose what is the right CRM specifically for you, feel free to shoot us an email and we will be happy to have a chat with you and see where we can help. Our email is hello@getleverage.com. And as always, thanks again for tuning in and see you on the next one.